All right, we are live, and this is episode 4 of the Authentic You podcast with my good friend and business professional, Claude. Claude, I'm going to have you introduce yourself because you have so much experience that I actually, for the first time, have to have printouts in front of me. I mean, 33 years of tons of roles and responsibilities. I mean, everything from CEO, CFO, um, Australia to the United States. Claude is a professional keynote speaker and a business professional overall. And so I'm super excited to have you on here because, I will tell you, keynote speaking is something I'm hoping to eventually transition into as a hobby and maybe a business opportunity for myself. And so it's very exciting for me to just learn and pick your brain. And you've shared, your slide deck for your most recent keynote that we're going to actually talk about today. And so let's get to know who Claude is first and foremost, and give yourself an introduction, where people can find you if they'd like to reach out, maybe an email or something of that nature.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it. And it's a privilege. And you're doing a wonderful job with these podcasts. I hope that you're getting lots of subscribers. So essentially, my name is Claude Alhanati, as Joe mentioned. And I am originally from Australia, as you may be able to tell. And
Is that's an accent? Oh,
my friends don't think so. So my friends in Australia are probably looking forward to watching this podcast.
they think I have the accent.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, for 100%. But they think I've lost mine. So, yeah, I've got to amp it up a little when I talk to them. But anyway, so I immigrated to the United States. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I immigrated about 26 years ago. Love this country. Happy to be here. And as you said, I've had a wide lens of roles and a wide lens of industries that I've been a part of over the last 35 years in business, which has created some interesting self-reflection on the topic that we're going to talk about today. I know we're going to get to that. But yeah, I've spent the last 25 years in the staffing industry, and keynote speaking isn't a business that I've done as a full-time role, but it's something that I've been privileged enough to be invited to do multiple times over the last 30 years in various settings, and it's something I certainly enjoy doing. Maybe it's something I can do as a profession when I retire or something. So if anybody wants to listen to me, but we'll see.
Well, I think a lot of people want to listen to you. I mean,
that's nice. Thank you.
Every time I've had an interaction with you, I think one of the things that I value the most is you're very, and I obviously use the word authentic a lot, but you're very authentic, and you want to really. Most people will say, "Hi, how are you?" And they're just saying it because they're like, you're genuinely wanting to know how am I, or what's going on in my life, and I think that plays a role into business a lot of times because, leadership, from my perspective, means that you really have to care about those individuals if you plan to lead them anywhere.
100%.
Every single one of them has their own roles and responsibilities and their own families and their own, things that are important to them, their own morals. And so as I was kind of going through the slide deck, some of the things that really stood out to me was just, there's just so many things that people can kind of fall off different ledges and maybe not be as authentic or true to themselves in the pursuit of trying to be successful.
100%.
And so before we get to the overall keynote that you gave, which I do want to make sure people understand what that keynote is. So the keynote specifically is about what makes someone successful and or unsuccessful, and how those two types of individuals in a team setting work together and could be successful as a team or unsuccessful as a team. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good description of it.
Yes.
So how long did it take you? Obviously, you've been in business world for over 33 years, but how long did it take you to kind of put together that keynote, ultimately to make put it all together to say, this is what makes someone successful, and this is some of the traps that people might fall into to make them unsuccessful? How long do you think that took?
30 years.
Nice.
And I'm still learning. So I think it's a continual learning process that doesn't end until the day it's over, right? I think you just have to be smart enough to be observant and be interested enough to take note of what you're witnessing, but it's around you every day. Success and non-success is around you every day, all day. So how this came about was a colleague and absolutely, I'd call him a friend of mine, Marshall.
Shout out to Marshall.
Yeah, shout out to Marshall. So Marshall is someone that I got to work with about 23 years ago. And I had the privilege of being a mentor for him and a supervisor of his in a couple of roles that he had with a couple of different companies, actually. He's a very successful guy. But Marshall contacted me. We've stayed in contact over the years. And he said to me, Claude, he's in a role right now where he is a regional sales director and a training director for a regional plumbing and HVAC company in Southern California. And he contacted me, and I know that he runs daily trainings, daily meetings, daily pep talks with his team. And he asked me if I'd be willing to come in and do a keynote for his team. And I said, sure. Thanks for asking. That's nice. It's nice to be asked, right? It's a privilege to be asked. And I said to him, sure. What topic do you want to talk about? And he said, I'm really invested in wanting to help my guys become the best they can be at whatever they're doing. So I'd love it if, you've been working for over 30 years, which was a polite way of telling me I was old. So you've been working for over 30 years. I'd love for you to speak to them about, what have you observed over 30 years, especially from the perspective of different companies, different industries, different roles, because there are common denominators.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what he found the most interesting. So it's not like what I'm speaking to relates to one industry or one type of individual. It relates to anything. Yeah. Absolutely anything. An athlete, a business person, a doctor, whatever. So, he said, so speak to common traits that you've observed over 30 years of successful people and common traits that you've observed over 30 years of unsuccessful people. And I'd really be interested if at the end of all that, you could speak to how does it all come together to create successful teams, successful teams and unsuccessful teams. Yeah. And that's really how it came about.
I think that's what's amazing about it, and what I like about everything you just said there is right now what's primary for a lot of people is social media. Right.
Sure.
And so everyone's seeing, and they'll see like clips of this as well, but people are seeing clips of different kinds of salespeople, different kinds of business professionals, keynote speakers, motivators, all these different kinds of people. And what's interesting is, like you said, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Those motivating factors that people are putting out there and the key successful things that individuals are doing that are helping them be successful, it doesn't matter what industry you're in.
100%.
These are just factors about who you have to become if you want to be successful and the traits that it requires to be successful.
Yes.
And I would say it's interesting because the last few years for myself specifically, I've had about 20 years, 18 years in total. So now I'm rounding up because I'm getting old. But 18 years of experience.
Wait till you see what I do.
18 years in one industry. And it wasn't until I opened my consulting business, and then it wasn't until I opened my health clinic that I was like, wow, all these traits that I've learned over the last 18 years, it doesn't matter what industry it is. I'm now convinced, which is great, that I can take these same traits that make me successful or have made me successful in this one industry and apply them to anything else. And then I also believe that they can be, and a big reason why this podcast exists is because I want people who are successful in their fields, whatever it is, fitness, real estate, filming. And I want people who are successful in those different industries to come on here, and they're going to talk about those topics, and it's going to apply to so many other people outside of their industry.
100%.
And so I feel like, the three that I've had before, the three podcasts I've had, it's kind of fun because now you're kind of wrapping that all together in these successessul traits. All three of those individuals have been successful.
Good. I've watched all your three podcasts. They're great.
I appreciate it too. I loved watching, you sent the picture of you and your wife watching it on the TV. I was like,
yeah.
I was like, this is good.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
This feels good.
Yeah.
So let's maybe talk about some of the first slides in the keynote. Sure. And, I know there's a lot of different material that's in here, but where would you want to start? Like, when you were doing your keynote, I'm genuinely curious, do you start with traits that make people unsuccessful to get people to like register like, oh, those are some of my traits? Has that ever No.
All of them at some point in my life have been my traits. I think it's part of maturing and growing, right? You start to become conscious about things you're doing that you were doing naturally, and then you start assessing them. So to answer your question, well, if I may, let me give a little bit of a snapshot of the lens that I'm coming from,
Okay.
which may appeal to some people.
Okay.
So the lens I'm coming from an industry perspective, I've spent time in the automotive industry. I've spent time in the sports and recreation industry. I've spent time in the finance and the banking industry. I've spent time in. Then when I immigrated to the United States, I have spent the last 25 years in the staffing industry, but within that space, in different verticals, whether it was professional staffing, whether it was light industrial and commercial staffing, whether it's been technical staffing, and then quite a few years in construction and industrial staffing, renewable energy staffing. And the roles I've held have varied from production roles to various types of leadership roles, whether they were vice president roles, area manager roles, branch roles, sales roles, director roles, a CEO role, a CFO role. And again, what's the relevance of that? Nothing really. No one cares about any of that. The relevance of it is I have observed people from all angles,
Yep.
right? Some of those people have been leaders for me. Some of those people have been mentors and coaches for me. Some of those people have been inspirations to me. Some of those people have misled me. Some of those people have aggravated me. Some of those people I've looked at and gone, wow, I never want to be like you because you're awful. So,
Yeah.
but that's valuable, right? So that
Correct.
you take a lot from that. You learn
Absolutely.
more from that than
Absolutely.
you do from the positive sometimes.
Yeah.
So your question was, how did I go about reflecting on it? Was
Yeah,
that the question?
and I can clarify a different point after, but I'll let you answer it first.
Yeah. So when I was asked to do it, I actually did it on an airplane. I fly a lot. I travel a lot for work, and I was sitting on a plane, and the relevance of that is it's peaceful. So I was
Right.
at peace, and I grabbed a piece of paper and pen and thought about the topic. I wanted to make sure I clearly understood what he wanted for his audience, and we're going to speak to that as well during the course of today. But I clarified with Marshall a couple of times what is it that you want? There's a lot I could say. What do you want? He said, I really want them to understand what common qualities are that you've observed so that they can reflect it to themselves. And I just started scribbling in no order.
Okay.
I just started as words came to me, and it wasn't hard because it was stuff I've seen. So my pen couldn't keep up with my brain.
Yeah,
you're just scribbling.
Firing it out.
So, and then later you're going to grab all those notes and now put them into a slide deck that has some chronological sense.
Yep.
But yeah, I was just scribbling on a plane and writing down the things and it was actually, that was almost the most cleansing part of this journey. It was really nice to sit and self-reflect. I think that we live in a world of action. We live in a world of act. You're expected to act on whatever. And I don't think we live enough in the world of think. Take some time to think.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to just go, okay, let me think.
Yeah.
And write some things down. And you think, and it's like, it flows, and then I put it together into a...
It also, that's one of my favorite things to do in the morning. I wake up in the morning, I just go for a walk, and there's nothing
Peaceful.
better than it's 4 a.m. in the morning, and there's nothing to down the thought process, essentially. Like, I'm not stressed about anything. I'm rested. I can just think.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that question is obviously you knew what Marshall wanted, right? You knew what his goal and vision was.
Yeah.
But then the audience, social intelligence aspect, like the audience and how they're going to receive it, right? Because you're going to have people in that audience that truly are successful individuals. They have the traits of successful individuals. And then you're going to have people in the audience who are listening to this message, and they're probably checking more of the boxes of areas of opportunity.
Right.
And so I kind of wanted to, I guess I wonder, do you think, just like any vice or anything that people have to improve, do you think they have to know that they're not being successful in certain key areas? It's almost like an alcoholic has to admit they're an alcoholic before they can get treatment. Like, do
Yeah,
you think someone who's unsuccessful has to realize that they're not successful or have key qualities of unsuccessful individuals?
absolutely. I think that sometimes people need to feel comfortable enough to admit it. I think sometimes people have to listen to someone else that doesn't know them talk about it to make it feel safe.
Hmm.
It's like, well, he's not really talking to me, but well, maybe I do a couple of those things.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm that bad, but
Yeah.
let me think about it later.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a variety of triggers that I think people can listen to that can help them. Like for example, recently I had done this keynote in an environment where I was aware that there might be a couple of people that might be a little sensitive to
Mm.
some of the subjects that we were going to talk about, and I talked about it with the host, and we talked about that, and they said, you know what? I think there's a lot of health value in. There's nothing offensive that's being said. They're observations. Like what I'm going to share with you today, I'm not telling you that I'm right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. It's what I've observed. So it's truly what I've seen with these eyes. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I think it's right. You don't have to,
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you did that. I mean, it's a kind thing to do to bring up, hey, there's going to be some sensitive topics here that people are probably not going to, fully maybe be able to digest.
Embrace, yeah.
Not every well, especially what's funny about it, I guess, is that the people who sometimes need the most help are the most resistant to it.
Sure.
And it's almost as if like they subconsciously know where they're at, but for whatever reason they're in a little bit of denial
Sure.
of I need to work on these qualities or I need to start improving these things. Um, and I'm not going to do that.
Sure.
It's almost like they check out. They put it behind them.
It's safe.
And then, well, yeah. And then when they're weighing themselves down, because how many times do they do that? Might be one quality. And then something else happens like, well, I'm going to throw that across,
The human journey is a fascinating thing. It's a
Yeah.
complicated thing. It's
Now,
a complex thing. You
well,
covered some of that in some of your previous podcasts.
yeah,
It was very interesting.
yeah. It's, I feel like experiences, good and bad, are what make us ultimately also successful. And so, somebody might be a very successful individual, but the role that they're put in
Right.
might be, unfortunately, an unsuccessful situation.
Yes.
And I like that in your overall keynote, towards the end, it ultimately you want to be part of. Everyone wants to be part of a winning team, but if you're a successful person, right? You're the best sports player or whatever, and you get put with the losing team or a bunch of people who have these qualities that are going to drag everything down. How successful can you truly be?
Right.
So environment is also a factor, a major factor.
Big factor.
I think also your support system, right? The people who surround you, your friends, family, people you introduce yourself, like others to. So I'd love to navigate through this, but there's so much information. So where should we start, Claude? Where do you think is the best part about this keynote for us
I
to
think
start?
a good place to start, if it's good with you, is talking about how someone tends to view themselves, whether it's successful or unsuccessful in their role.
Okay.
What do you think?
I love it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So, okay. I find that something that's helped me mature and grow is becoming more conscious and self-reflective of the things I do on a daily basis in my role. Now, one of the interesting parts of the keynote is when I'll ask the room, what is your role? And people will respond as I usually expect them to respond. This guy will say, I'm a service technician. Okay. What is your role? I'm a service manager. What is your role?
They're giving titles.
They're giving out their title. That's their role. That's the role that they think about. That when I ask, what's your role? That's what, and then I say, well, now let me tell you what my role is. And they're expecting me to say, my role is, well, my current role is my work role. There was a key word there. Mm-hmm. My work role is I'm a director of strategic accounts for a national construction staffing company, construction staffing. So, but they're surprised when I say to them, well, I have many roles. And again, they're thinking singular dimension. They're thinking, oh, he's talking about work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I explain is I'm a father.
Yes, sir.
That's a role that I have, probably my most important role. I'm a husband, equally important role. Love you, Lisa. I'm a, hopefully she watches.
Yeah. I think I have a feeling you're going to put this up, eat some popcorn.
Right. Hey,
Yeah.
Lisa, watch this,
Yeah.
Hey, was that cool? I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. Being a friend is a role.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a student at some times. I'm a mentor at some times. I'm a team member. I'm a team leader.
Yep.
I'm an exercise partner. So I'm labeling all these things off, and people are just looking at me saying, "Well, all you're doing is telling us all the things you do," and I'm trying to say, "Well, yes, but I'm also recognizing that all those different moments." I'm going to mention one more, if I may.
Sure.
I'm a dog owner. That is a role that I have, and there's a reason I brought that up. I'm going to share it. But all those things are roles that are part of my life. They make up my life. Mm-hmm. And if I want to do well at them, I have to think about each one of them separately, in silos, in buckets. And, like you learn through your life, you get appraisals, right? People will do an appraisal on your performance. How well are you doing? How poorly are you doing? Where can you improve? Whatever. And I think the best appraisal that anyone can do is a self-appraisal. Yeah. It's the most powerful because it's the most honest. It needs to be the most honest. You need to be able to look in the mirror and do your appraisal on whatever. And so as I looked at my roles in buckets, I found that I was able to then self-reflect and grade myself. It's not a grade that I have to advertise to anyone, even though I'd be more than happy to. In fact, I'm going to share one in a minute. It's not a grade I have to advertise. It's just me and me, because it's my journey, right? It's not what someone thinks of me. It's what I think of me.
Yeah.
What do I think of how I'm doing as a dad? What do I think of how I'm doing as a husband? What do I think of how I'm doing as a dog owner? And so as you self-reflect on these roles and you're honest with yourself, it allows you the opportunity to take the appropriate action steps to make yourself as good as you can be in each of those roles. If I may, I'd love to share a role that I was really sucking at.
Okay.
So, dog owner. So I'm a dog owner. I love my dog, Coda, beautiful dog, Chow Shepherd. Before someone out there gets mad at me, no, I've never abused my dog, ever. I would never do that. I love my dog. We take care of the dog.
This was the worst role I had. Bad dog.
Yes, it's a beautiful dog. I love her. So why am I rating myself that I was sucking at it? So, of course, one of the things that I try to do my share with is I'll take Coda for a walk. And, Coda's just so happy, right? I come home, no matter what mood I'm in, Coda's happy to see me. He's like, oh, he's home. Yep. Like, wow, you saw me this morning. and so, it's like, okay, she wants to go for a walk. And sometimes I'm busy. I'm just busy. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm busy. Yep. And I take Coda for a walk and we start walking. And, I've got calls to make. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll make calls while I'm walking the dog because I got things to do. And Coda, she's just excited because she's been waiting for that walk. And so she kind of steers over there. And it's like, yeah, oh yeah, I can hear you, Joe. Yep, I'm with you on the call. Yep. Come on, And part of me is like, Coda, I haven't got time for this. Yeah. Come on, And Coda wants to sniff something. It's like, oh, come on, I got to get this done. I got reports to do. And then, gosh, there's a bird in the tree, and Coda decides she wants to bark at the bird. And now I'm mad because it's like, oh, I'm on a call, Coda. Like she can understand that. I'm on a call, quiet. So I reflected on that in my role as a dog owner and thought, that sucks. All this dog wants is just a 30-minute enjoyable walk. Not me dragging her around, pulling her, telling her don't bark because I'm on a call. And if I'm going to take her for a walk, if that's part of my role, I can do better. I can invest 30 minutes of my life in Coda, because if I can't, why am I a dog owner? Why bother? Is she there as a statue to just make the house look good? Or is she part of my family? So I literally self-reflected on that and said, yeah, my phone can go on airplane mode for 30 minutes. Let's go, Coda.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of enjoyment being in the moment with Coda, watching her sniff and take pleasure in the bush and take pleasure in the flowers and, oh, I got to pee in this bush. Like, oh, maybe I
Yeah.
do too. No, I didn't say that.
Yeah,
But, you know, she wants to bark at a bird. Let's bark at that bird and enjoy barking at that bird. And then you notice the bird starts squawking back and it's like, wow, I'm watching
It's
nature in
nature.
action, right?
Yeah.
And so I became a better, more knowledgeable person just for that. And I became better at my role as a dog owner just by being in the moment and self-reflecting. So anyway, any of those roles I talked about, father, husband, friend.
You do it for all of them.
Yeah, yeah. And also being conscious that your role changes all day, every day.
Complicated or uncomplicated. Some
Right?
Yep.
So how many times, Joe, have you been on the phone? Like I've called a business colleague to talk about a business transaction. And when they answered the phone, it was clear to me, oh, they need a friend right now.
Yeah.
They need to get something off their chest. So you got to change roles.
Yep.
You got to go, okay.
Happened to me yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Share.
Well, that specific one I probably won't share because it was a very
I'm sorry.
intimate
But
conversation.
conceptually, not with detail.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you, I mean, a couple different things just to kind of tie some of these pieces together is, you know, you mentioned while you're on the plane, one of the peaceful moments that you had was just you're sitting there writing, you're just thinking, you're getting things off your shoulders, out of your brain, from your heart, you're writing it down onto a piece of paper. I mean, essentially by being present and being in the moment in the role that you have at that given time, you're doing the same thing. And so you're being present with Coda. Am I saying it right? Okay, Coda. Being present in the moment with Coda, you know, you're giving everything to Coda, and then at the same time, you're also finding your own a little bit of peace. And then now you get to think. And then maybe you do think about that call you have to do later, but but it's a different mindset. And now you're not stressed about it, right? Maybe the conversation that you need to have about the business transaction or any of these other things, there's a little bit more clarity to it.
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of like emotional intelligence to really decide that you need to do that in each role. And sometimes I feel like it might actually take the moment like what you had an experience where you're not being successful in that role and you go, oh, wait a minute. So maybe for people who are listening, something that they can take as action is to self-evaluate some of the roles that they have, right?
Absolutely.
Write those roles down and look at them and go, what's one or two things I've been successful at in that role recently? And what's one or two things maybe I haven't put some time and effort towards in those roles and responsibilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've had to do that over the years, especially as a business professional with my son and my daughter. I've had to do that consciously or unconsciously. There was a period of time where I was driving to LA and it's 100+ miles commute each way. It's 3 to 6 hours of total commute time, depending on what time you leave. And unconsciously, I didn't realize I was becoming like a weekend dad. And it's something as simple as sending them a text to say good morning or good night, or I hope you have a great day, or how was your day, or calling them while on the road versus taking the next business call. So I think you're those moments of when you kind of have that clarity, like you're yelling at somebody, you're freaking out about somebody in that role. Unfortunately, it takes those.
Yes.
It does take those.
Yes, it does. It does. I mean, we are all successful and unsuccessful at stuff every day. And you got to capture those moments. I call it doing the autopsy, right? You have an exchange with someone and it's like, I'm going to do the autopsy on that. How did that go? Not very well.
Do you do that daily?
As I've gotten older, yes. Wow. When I was younger, I wasn't in the moment and conscious enough of what I was doing to think of it that way. But as I've gotten older, yes, I tend to want to think about things I've done and did it go well? Why didn't it? Did it go well? It did. Why? Okay.
Yeah. You haven't seen this because I'm not sure that you have an Instagram, and if you do, then we gotta follow each other. But
no.
I do post generally weekly. I have it's called 4,000 weeks because that's the average lifespan. I think it goes to like 79 years old or something or something of that nature, and or maybe it's 85. Anyway, the whole point of it is every week you fill in a box. and it's just one tiny little box, and it's like thousands it's 4,000 squares. So imagine at the end of every week, you're checking off one of those boxes. And so that is my self-reflection on my roles and responsibilities at the end of the week.
Interesting.
And I'm not advertising for 4,000 weeks, but it is a cool poster, because at the end of the week, what I've learned to do is I check that off and I ask myself, did I do what I was supposed to do this week?
Right.
And I assess what was my
Right.
roles this week. Now, every week, my roles
Right.
change.
Yes.
Some weeks I might have to be a little bit more dominant towards my, owner role of a business.
Sure.
Or sometimes I may need to be a little bit more better of a father or a friend, like you said. So I think about how did I intend for the week to go, and the
Yes.
roles that I was supposed to partake in, and were they successful?
Yes.
Now I started that not even thinking about roles and responsibilities. I actually started doing that because I'm very hypersensitive to the amount of time in life that I have left, and because I've experienced a lot of death, and so I'm always thinking this could be the week, right? And so maybe I need to talk to 4,000 weeks. Hey, maybe we need like a day poster. That'd be a big poster, but daily, I don't know that I self-assess, like at the end of the day. Maybe that's something, to do a little bit better of a job for.
Well, it's a journey,
Yeah.
right? It's a journey.
Yeah.
You're already doing some great things. So can you do more great things? Of course, because you've got plenty of years ahead of you, God willing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And me too. I try to think about, what can I do a little bit better this year? What can I do? What's one thing that I learned to make my goals more achievable. So I used to do the New Year's resolution thing, and the goal was like, wow, I'm going to change my whole life this year. And then it's like, that doesn't work.
I talked
So
about
then
that
it's like,
last week.
I'm going to notch it up a little. I'm going to do a little better. And
Yeah.
that seems to work.
Yeah, Charlie and I had this conversation, and I talked about 3 pillars that I like to use, and the first one's preparation, and that's usually what happens is people put too big of a plan out there.
Yes.
They set it too far out, and then
Intentions are good. It's like, conquer the world.
Yeah, I want to be, exactly. Okay, so let's say someone dials that in. They now can assess their roles and responsibilities effectively. What's kind of the next stage of that?
Well, I think that I'm sure that where we're going to get to probably pretty shortly is, all right, then, well, what have you observed? What are the key qualities? So we'll get to that shortly. But I think that so you break down your roles, you understand you have many roles, you grab the idea that, you have the opportunity to do a self-appraisal on whatever frequency you want, daily, weekly, whatever, to improve or modify things or keep doing things that you're acknowledging are good. But then on the flip side, I think the next most important thing to understand is, at what point can you actually look in the mirror and say, I'm successful, right? Now again, I will repeat for the audience, these are just my opinions. You don't have to agree. You can listen to this and go, that guy, Joe.
Well, I
don't know what he's talking about. But sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I actually love the fact that you had put together, like, what are the common traits
I'm going to do those
of successful and unsuccessful people? Because I was reading these and I'm like, I check a couple of these boxes on both sides.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Of course. 100%. So I'm going to do that next. But the key thing that I really wanted to say to the audience is, from my perspective, I believe that when you can actually put a stamp on it and say, I was successful, is death. So to me, it's death. Why do I say that? Because life is a continuing journey. So if I'm unsuccessful at something today, I can make it better tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can be successful at it tomorrow. If I failed at something today, it's not a failure forever. I can win at it tomorrow. And so to me, it's an understanding that it's an ongoing path, an ongoing journey, that if you're conscious in the moment and aware of what you're doing, you can improve it. You can change its direction. You can change the course of, I could become a better dog owner today than I was, yesterday just by being in the moment, and
Yeah.
it just required some. So it's not finite to me. Being successful and unsuccessful is not finite in terms of time until your day of passing comes. That's when it's done,
Yeah.
and it's not restricted to one role in your life. It's many roles in your life, and it's ever changing. So I think that to me is the next thing that's important to capture and accept. Because also it buys you a ticket, right? It buys you a ticket to success, because it's like, well, if I wasn't doing good at something, it's not too late because
Yeah.
I'm still here. I can fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. Two different mentors both shared something with me that are aligned with that. And one was actually when I was like 16 years old. I was just starting kind of my parking career, and I'd made a mistake, and I couldn't get over it. Like I just kept being very like judgmental against myself and super, super upset. And my mentor at that time and good friend now, Vladimir, this guy does Ironmans and is very successful, good family man. Um, he literally just looked at me. He's like, Joe, you're a lifelong learner. Just remember that. You just got to
Right.
be a
There it is.
lifelong learner. That's it. You make a mistake, you learn from it, you move on.
Yep.
You're going to make another mistake, you move on. You just have to continue to go through that process.
Yep.
The other one, I actually was lucky enough to get selected and do an 18-month life coaching with this gentleman named Malcolm from San Diego. And Malcolm's program, and part of it, what he did was he had you write mission statements. And at the end of the day, like I just kept kind of beating myself up because the mission statement I don't know, I just couldn't figure out what was my mission statement. Like, what am I here to do?
Right. Your
And
purpose.
I'm an overthinker. So I'm like, well, how am I supposed to, as soon as I write now most people, being fair, there were other people in the program and I think they did a great job, but they were done with their mission statement like that. I'm like, this is my mission statement. This is going to be with me forever. Like that's how serious I took it. And maybe there's value to that. Right. But I kept overthinking it. And one of the things that I put in there was like, I kept saying that I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach people. I want to teach people. I want to teach people. And
Okay.
he corrected me very quickly. And he said, how do you think you can teach people? You have to learn. You have to
100%.
be someone who is patient enough to observe and also willing to go and understand different things, listen and be able to articulate, and so I was like, So literally my mission statement ended up changing. So that way, like, instead of saying that I wanted to teach people, I wanted to learn from people.
100%.
I think those two things
Makes you a greater teacher.
It does because I think it allows me the opportunity to really intentionally try to be a sponge and get things from people, not use people, but everyone has value and everyone has something to teach one another. And I think everyone, I know one of the things on here, and I say this all the time about ego. Unfortunately, people have this guard up that they know everything, even if even if they are an expert in certain fields. I think they're an expert because they kept absorbing. Everyone's a sponge.
Yep. Yep.
So do we want to go through some of these traits?
Let's do it. Let's
Okay.
do it. So I summarized it under successful and unsuccessful people, and hopefully I can remember them all. If I forget any, there's the deck. Yeah,
I got it.
There's the deck. Let's see how many of them I can remember.
Okay.
So successful people are, again, these are my observations. They're not right or wrong. It's what I've seen. I've typically seen that successful people are basically, they're confident. Confident doesn't have to mean arrogant. There's a difference between confident and arrogant. It's just more of an energy that they tend to have because they're feeling strong about themselves. They're feeling good about themselves. They tend to be confident and they take pride in what they do, right? So someone that doesn't take pride in what they do, it's going to reflect in the outcome of whatever role they're in at that moment. You're going to see it, right? I mean, have you experienced that?
Yep.
Okay. Another one is that I've found that successful people tend to be honest because they're comfortable with the truth. Whether the truth is good or the truth is bad, it's the truth. So deal with it, right? And accountability is a word that usually aligns with honesty, right? So own it. Hey, I'm sure you've been in situations with whatever, with work or whatever. It doesn't even, with friends, where they all know what you did
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to take pleasure out of watching
Yeah.
you be in pain
Yeah.
if you don't own it.
Oh yeah.
Whereas if you just say to your friends, hey, you won't believe it. This is what I did. I screwed this up. I'm really sorry. I own it. Hey, I'm going to fix it.
Yep.
Then at that point, everyone's like, oh yeah, cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one cares anymore.
Yeah.
It's just it's more fun when you don't own it. Have
Yeah.
you experienced that?
Absolutely. And actually, my best friend is good at doing this because he'll call me out all the time. He's like, no, yeah, you have to own it.
Accountability is good. Self-accountability is the best, right? Holding yourself accountable. And I found that successful people, they tend to be secure. They're just, again, it's just comfortable. They're comfortable. They're often humble because they feel they got nothing to prove.
Yeah.
So again, is this true of every successful person? No, not necessarily, but it's just what I've observed. It's a common quality. They're open-minded and they welcome critique. So if there's something that they can do better, tell me.
Yeah.
They don't tend to think that they know it all. They tend to be like, yeah, I'm open. Give me ideas. They tend to. One of the two most important ones, in my opinion, as it relates to not only work, certainly work, but any role, but certainly work. Number one, they have a clear understanding of what's expected of them in their role.
Yeah.
I've often found that people, that they're not clear on what it is they want. Like even when Marshall asked me to do that keynote for his team, I made sure, I'm glad I did this. I made sure I asked him twice, so what exactly do you want? What message do you want your people to get? And I'm glad I did, Joe, because what he then clarified wasn't what I thought.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what you want.
Changed the whole dynamic of it.
Right. So clearly understanding it took it from, it could have been unsuccessful and a disaster, where he would have gone, oh, I wish he didn't talk about that, to, oh, okay, now he's talking about what I wanted him to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing that I had written down was successful people tend to know how to stay in their lane, right?
Yeah.
So like whatever role you're in for today, accept that role and do the best as you can at that role.
Yeah.
You can give input to some other role or whatever, but don't start doing someone else's role. Do your role because you accepted your role. So that's success. That's traits of successful people. How do they ring for you?
They ring great. And here's a funny perspective. I think there's a lot of people that are probably listening that are going to go, I do that. But it's how often do you do these? Do you do these sometimes?
Right.
Or do you do them all the time?
Right.
And then here's the other part. It's very easy. And I did this, and maybe this is a humble part of me, but I did this as you were going through, and I said, okay, yeah, right, yeah. And then I go, oh, hold on, here comes the unsuccessful part. How many of these am I going to check? So I think it's important for people to understand like what they are doing, what their role is, how can they be successful in that role, what's the expectation from the other people that might be part of that role.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things on here is honest and humble. I think it's a very complicated trait. I think a lot of people intend to be honest, but weirdly enough, when you surround yourself by other influences, other individuals, it actually becomes harder, and it takes a lot of moral strength and humbleness to disagree with maybe like the social setting. So like when I think about it from a work perspective, I know plenty of people that are very successful, but I get surprised when they're in a group setting, they actually change some of their qualities and some of their morals and some of the things that I value about them. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like I kind of hold them here, but then now in a group setting, they kind of shift, or around different people, they shift. So I think these are qualities that people really are going to have to self-reflect on and say, how consistent are they with these qualities? And are they doing it because that's who they are?
Right.
Or are they doing that because maybe that's the expectation of
that's what's expected? Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
Ooh, here comes the good one. Let's see how many of you check these other boxes.
All right.
So the unsuccessful.
Well, and I'm gonna enjoy even sharing with you. Like I've checked lots of these boxes over the years, because again, it wasn't a finite point in time. I was able to look at them and go, "Oh, that sucked. I can do better." So I'll give an example of that if you're interested. But anyway, common qualities I've seen over the years of unsuccessful people. They tend to I've often seen that they tend to be insecure by nature and they want to brag. So they have this need to continually tell you about their accomplishments and their successes, and I did this and I did that, and you're looking at them going, I never asked,
Yeah.
but I'm happy for you,
Yeah.
But they and now understand. I'm not talking about when you have a sincere friendship with someone and you want to share a win, or your wife or your kids. That's different. Of course you want to share that. Why wouldn't you? I'm saying when you just have a need in whatever setting with people that it's not even relevant to a conversation, they just start going on about, I did this. And you're like, good for you.
Yeah.
Who cares? Right.
Yeah.
Right. They'll hide behind the wins. So we all have wins and losses. And if you can't admit that, well, that's the beginning of the problem.
Yeah.
So for yourself, it's a problem for you. It's not a problem for me, because if I don't want to associate with you, then I'll just disconnect.
Yep.
But for you, if you want to be the best of you, you got to be able to own the losses. And you got to be able to go, oh,
whoops,
I cannot believe I did that. I'm going to do better. They'll mask their failures, and I'm sure you can connect with people you've met over the years that do this. It's always everybody else's fault. It's not my fault. It's because he did this or she did that, or
In my opinion, those are the worst. And
Right.
I don't want those people around me.
Right. It's the world's fault. It's excuses. It's always excuses. Oh, I can't do well at my role because the economy's bad. Oh, we're in a recession. Quick story on that. In 2010, when we went into a very tough economic period of time, what I'll share is my job became redundant. My role was eliminated. I was put into a production role, and I was a vice president. And in that production role, I decided to take lemons and make lemonade rather than have a woe is me pity party. And in that particular production role, I made more money than I've ever made in my career anywhere.
Wow.
I paid off my house. I paid off our debts. We paid off everything. And that was in a bad moment. So again, don't blame the economy. See what you can do to make it work for you.
Yep.
It is what it. Don't worry about what you can't control. That unsuccessful people tend to focus on everything that's not controllable.
Yeah.
Because it's their out.
Yeah.
Well, worry about what you can control and do that well, right? Unsuccessful people, they tend to not understand clearly what their role is. And they don't stay in their lane. They want to get in everyone else's lane and tell them how to do their job rather than just stay in your lane, right? They'll gossip. They need the spotlight. They want the spotlight on them, and they resist change. So that's some of the unsuccessful stories. Do we have time for a quick story?
We do. We have plenty of time.
Okay. I was going to share one of my most valuable lessons. Younger years, I'd gotten my degree in accounting. I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't want to go to school that long. So I said, I'll do accounting. All right. So I did accounting. And I got to work with my father, which is one of the greatest memories of my life because he died shortly after that. And so I got to see him in a different environment than being dad. And he was so respected by people. I miss him a lot. But anyway, so I got to work in his office. He was a high-ranking person. He was like the highest ranking. He was like the treasurer of the company.
Okay.
And I was in that role. I had my degree, my accounting degree. I got my first set of business cards. They looked good. Chief accountant. I was like, yeah, look at that. I felt pretty good about that. And my cards sat proudly, and I'd give them out to anyone I could give them to. And anyway, I was good at my job. So I'll accept that. I was good. I was the number one at that point in time. It was in an automotive dealership. I was the state accountant of the year for Toyota, Australia, blah, blah, blah. I could do my job well. That's not the issue. The issue was I seemed to like my business cards. So one day, at the end of the day, my dad said, hey, I got some good feedback for you, some good critique, if you're willing to take it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, sure, Dad. He's like, okay, but what I need you to do is I need you to sit quietly and not respond while I give it to you. And I'm like, sure. He said, oh, where are your business cards? And they're right here. He said, give them to me. Okay. So I gave him the box. He opened the box. He said, now remember the promise. You have to just sit there. I said, sure.
Total dad move.
Right. And he grabbed some. And he looked at him. And then he tore him in half. And I was like,
Yeah, what are you doing here?
Dad, you said you'd sit there. Oh, okay. And he continued, to speed the story up, he progressed through the whole box.
Whoa.
And I had none left. And I was like, and he said, now I like you a lot better.
Nice.
And I said, what? He said, you're a great kid and you're really good at your job. But those business cards made you an asshole. But now I like you again. All right, let's not order anymore. Well, I did a lot of reflection about that and I understood the message. And it was a learning opportunity. It was like, okay. I don't need to throw in someone's face my title, who I am. I need to just be quiet, stay in my lane, do my job, let people come to me. So anyway.
I love that story because funny enough to share a story with you, that similar type of setting happened where I realized for myself, I was very worried about my title. And it wasn't until I had someone, I was so used to progressing and progressing and progressing and winning and winning and winning. And then I got to a point and it was me versus somebody else for a title change. And that person progressed and I didn't. And I was just like, the fuck, And I had to do my self-reflection then. And I realized, you know what? The title actually doesn't matter anymore. Right. The title really doesn't matter. What matters is, what am I doing for my team and the people who work with me, and how am I progressing in my life, and what are the things that I'm working on, and how do I value those things? And I made a conscious decision at that point in time that I was going to start doing two things. Number one, I was going to tell people I don't care what my title is, because my role and responsibility overall in leadership is to take care of the people who work with me. Right. That's it. It doesn't matter at what level, right? At every level, right. That is my 100%. Role. That is my role and responsibility, is to take care of the people who are trusting me at my position to proceed forward, guide them forward. 100%. The second thing I realized was, there was a lot of ego surrounding that. And I needed my team to understand that they don't work for me, I work for them.
100%.
And if I didn't make that decision, I don't know that I would have been as successful the next few years after that. So I think that's a very, very valuable thing that your dad taught you.
Well, here I am 27 years later, remembering it. So I remember it. And I don't even barely order cards anymore. Yeah. I nearly feel guilty to have cards ever since that. It's like, I don't want cards. Yeah. My dad's watching.
Well, and it is funny how titles really impact people. Like, I've gone to visit some of my locations, and they hear, somebody tells them whether it's their area manager or regional person, whoever, they're like, the blah, blah, blah is on the way here, right? And they throw out the title. Yeah. They just tell them the title. Yeah. And then you show up and I just want to be so energetic and happy. And and then they're like they're robots because they get scared. They're like, oh my God, this person's, we're human. Every 100%. Single person is a human first. Doesn't matter if you're CEO, president, 100%. It doesn't matter. Yep. 100%. It really doesn't matter. Okay.
There's only two titles I care about: husband, father.
I love that.
Outside that, whatever. Nothing else will get written on the tombstone, right?
So how do people, what do they do when they've registered these, and they've got probably 4 or 5 on this side and maybe 1 or 2 on this side, and they have these qualities, right, of both, as you said, we all have successful and unsuccessul qualities. Sure. So what's 100%. The action that has to happen to, is it
self-reflection?
It's a self-reflection.
Yeah. Security. You've got to decide that you care about changing. Some people might be very happy where they're at. Be happy. Yeah, do you, yeah. Right? Do you? For me, I wanted to remember myself, and I care about how I'm remembered when I'm gone. my father said to me, you can tell I miss my parents a lot. My
Absolutely.
my father said to me, he said, son, no one, after he had destroyed my business cards, he said to me, son, there's only two things that people are going to remember when you die, and that is, did you always pay your bills and were you a man of your word?
Mm.
And I heard that. I heard him say that. But it didn't necessarily sink in until he died. And when he died, because my father, people loved my father. I just can't be as good a person as he was. He was too good a person.
Mm.
And when I went to his funeral, there's a lot of people there because he was a very loved man. I went to his funeral and Joe, a guy comes up to me and he says, my sincerest condolences. Your father, he was a man of his word. And I was like, when your dad said he was going to do something, he always did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. Well, no big deal. Until the second guy came up and shook my hand. When Joe said something, all it took was a handshake. You could take it to the bank. And I was like, okay, he set this up. So
Yeah.
he told these
Hey,
guys, hey,
guys.
man, at my funeral, can you say this? Because it'll
Yeah.
help my son.
Yeah.
I had several people make statements to that effect. And
Yeah.
so it became my North Star, right? It became my compass. It was like, and it became what I've tried to make sure I try to impart with my son. Son, and he's shown, I'm so proud of my son. I love my son. I'd die for him, as you would for your kids. And he, I've seen my son demonstrate a few things to me, even in recent times, where it's like, he's getting it. He
Yeah.
got it. He heard it.
Makes you
He
proud.
heard it. Yeah, he heard it. He used his North Star. It's what you do when no one's watching, right? It's what you do. Integrity is what you do when no one's watching. And he had opportunities. He could have taken advantage of a situation. But there was that voice.
Yeah. Why?
There was that voice going, that's not the right thing. And I was like, all right. So anyway, yeah, so I'm sorry. I don't want to get off track. But yeah, to your question, I think you got to decide you want to change, right? Because some people don't. And that's cool. You do you. But
Yeah.
if you want to change, then it's a matter of self-reflection. And it's not hard to change. If you're secure enough, ask your friends what you could do better. Ask them.
Yeah. The power of vulnerability.
Yeah. Vulnerability is beautiful. Vulnerability is strength, right? Vulnerability is strength.
It is.
People feel that it's weakness, and it's the opposite. If you're able to go, I suck at that. Can you help me? Because I'd actually like to do better.
Yeah. It's
know?
funny. I have a friend who does welding, and he explained to me that to make the strongest materials, you have to look for all the vulnerable parts.
100%. Where's it going to break?
Yeah. What?
Right.
And you have to test it out.
Right.
You have to see.
Put it under duress.
You have to stress test.
Right.
Yeah. And if you don't, then you really don't understand where the strengths and weaknesses are ultimately.
Right.
To make it better.
I got plenty more weaknesses that I hopefully have more years to fix. So I got plenty of things that I can go, okay, I'm going to do a little better at this. I'm going to do a little better about that. I can stop sweating the small stuff and start,
I'll share with you something that was pretty vulnerable for me to do over the last 7 months or so.
Please.
I made a recommendation to my sister right before she passed away to make amends with people she had wronged. And after I explained that to her, and I made amends with her first, that was the whole process, right? So she was in the hospital, went and visited her, made amends with her, and then I recommended that she needed to do the same thing for several people in her life. And she had a few more months before she passed, and she did some of that, probably not all of it. But then I kind of it got stuck in my head after she passed. I was like, I've wronged some people, that easily I don't need to go back to because they're not in my life.
Yep.
So it'd be very easy for me to just be like, you know what, I'm going to proceed forward in my life, and I'm going to be this person and the right type of person with all these other new people. But then it just got stuck with me that I was like, to your point, what are people going to remember about you?
Right.
If I pass today, I know all these people on this side would say great things about me. There's a few people on this side that I probably wronged that, I need to have a conversation with them about. And so I made amends with as many of them as I could find and or communicate with.
Right.
And some of them were confused. They're like, you didn't wrong me, but I knew I did. And then I had to kind of explain the process of why or how I felt I did. And that's a tricky thing because it could also be taken the other way where it's like you're just trying to unload your burden, clear your conscience.
Right.
So you have to be careful with how you do that. But I think for the most part, most of those people were like very understanding and very like receptive to it.
And grateful.
And absolutely, I think at that point, I'd say 9 out of 10. Now the relationship can grow and or move forward. Whether we interact every day or once a year or whatever it is, or if I run into them at, on the public, whatever.
Right.
And so 100%. I think that was a vulnerable moment for
100%.
me because I realized I wasn't that person who wronged them anymore internally. I know I'm not that person, but essentially I knew that I had been that person.
Right.
And you never know the impact you make on certain people when you are, being an egotistical asshole,
Right.
Well,
we're human.
Yeah.
We're flawed, right?
Absolutely.
We're not robots. We're not robots that do things the same every day. The human interactions I have are not the same every day. And I'm human. I have bad days. Yeah. And usually when I have a bad day, for whatever reason, I did some things wrong and I can do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we're human.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure how we're doing on time necessarily. Are we good?
I totally realized halfway through.
Yeah.
We're at 1 hour, 5 minutes.
Okay. So, we have a little bit more time here. Is there things that you'd want to press forward on and clarify? I mean, I love success is the journey. It's not the destination.
Yeah. I think that, I want to be conscious of your time. How much time do we have?
Another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. So I think that one of the things that probably your listeners may be interested in, but it's totally up to you. We can go wherever you want to go, Joe.
Yeah.
But there's two topics I would talk about. One is how we can make ourselves better as individuals, and then that last piece of what I've observed of how it comes together as a team.
Okay.
So the quick version, because it could be a podcast of its own, but the quick version of how we can become better is I believe that people are made up of 3 key elements. This is, again, this is what I believe. You don't have to agree.
No, I agree.
And that is the body, the mind, and the soul.
I went right to it.
The body, the mind, and the soul.
I knew it.
And I think that we as individuals have the opportunity to invest in each of those 3 elements. To say to you that you can invest in it every day, you can't really, not necessarily, life gets in the way. But to be conscious of them, and every week, I don't like to say every day I do that, but I think I can confidently say every week I make sure that I've done something to invest in my mind, something to invest in my body, something to invest in my soul. So very quickly, from a mind perspective, don't you think it's fascinating that as human beings, I think this is mind-blowing. Actually, it's kind of scary. We use less than 10% of our brain.
Yeah.
So what the heck do we do with the other 90%?
Yeah.
What genius level could we possibly be if we used
all of it, or 20%?
20%.
Yeah.
Imagine 20%, right? So my idea of investing in the mind is, this is my idea, there's different ways to do it. I've committed to every day or every week, let's use the word week. Every week I'm making sure that I'm reading something or listening to a podcast. Authentic You, subscribe, or subscribe, tell your friends, reading a book, not about something that necessarily I even do, not about just something that's of interest to me. Let's just expand my mind. Let's tap into something that I didn't care about and just learn about it.
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of interest in learning about dogs and how to be a better dog owner, understanding the dog. Why does the dog do things it does, rather than just saying it's a dog? Well, okay, it's a dog, but why does it do that? So just invest in the mind, invest in the body. Well, it's the only, I know you've talked about this in your previous podcast. Well, it's the only machine that's going to get us through.
Yeah.
We only get one. There's no redo. So my view on it is, if it's the only machine that's going to hopefully carry me through some more years, put something into it, eat a little bit better, do some exercise, give it the appropriate amount of sleep, invest in it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's exercise because I love exercise. Not everyone loves it. I enjoy it. I get to see you at the gym. That's inspiring. But you know, I enjoy it. It's my outlet. It's a physical outlet. Put something into your body to make it better. And then the last one is the interesting one, the soul, right? People think about, how do you invest in the soul?
Yeah.
What's the most immediate thing that comes to mind when you
Probably
think
religion.
about religion? Correct. So the most immediate thing that comes to mind when you say invest in the soul, someone goes, "Oh, he wants me to go to church." And what I like to say to people is, no, not at all. I happen to be religious in my own way. I love my religion. Some people, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Christian, Catholic, Hindu, Buddha, whatever. It doesn't matter. Atheist, you believe in nothing, that's okay too. Investing in the soul is more about, to me, it's not religion, it's your moral compass.
Correct.
Invest into your moral compass.
Well, that making amends that I did was a cleanse of my soul.
Oh, 100%.
That was what I needed to do.
100%. That's an example.
Yeah.
So thank you. So that's an exact example of what I mean. So buying a homeless guy a meal is an investment in your soul. You know, if I see a guy that's on the street and he's asking for help, and I'll say to him, "Hey man, are you hungry?" You know, I might not necessarily want to give you money.
$20.
Yeah, that's not, but if you're hungry, I'll buy you a meal. And that's very soul cleansing to me. Soul cleansing can be as simple as listening to a friend that's in need, right? So a friend makes it clear. You shared that you had a conversation like that this week. You know, I often, it's clear that, someone has something that they need a board to listen to. They need someone to bounce it off of.
Yeah.
Invest in your friend. That's soul cleansing. So there's a lot you can do about that. But anyway, so making commitment to invest in yourself as an individual is, I think, a key part of this. But the next part of it, and probably the last part of it, unless you wanted to talk about that anymore, is how does it come together as a team?
Yeah.
Right? How does it come together as a team? And I'm going to give a shout out to someone, if I may.
Sure.
Because it's fair. I don't want to take the credit for something I didn't do. You know, over my years, I've had more than my share of attending speeches or motivational speakers or training sessions or Zoom sessions or whatever. And, you know, some of them are good and some of them are okay and some of them suck. You know, you're like, oh my God, I hate this. Without a doubt, the best motivational speaker, I hope he watches this. Maybe I'll email him. The best motivational speaker I've ever seen, for me, the most impactful motivational speaker is a guy out of San Francisco. His name is Patrick Lencioni. Mr. Lencioni, if you're out there, you impacted my life. Patrick Lencioni, he runs a company called The Table Group. And he's a great speaker. If you have a chance to pull up his videos and watch it, impactful. So the topic he spoke about was, he was invited to the company where I used to work at that time as a speaker. And he was helping us. We had had a couple of acquisitions. So we were bringing more teams together. So the subject that he talked about was, it's one of his, he has various speeches, but this one is probably one of his most famous ones. There's a book about it. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And he has a pyramid. And that pyramid has 5 layers, right? That pyramid has 5 layers. And actually, it's the next one. Actually, it's this one.
Excuse me.
No, not at all. It's that one. But yeah, go to Patrick Lencioni, The Table Group, because he deserves the credit for that. Get his book. But that table talks about what are the fundamental principles that make a team successful, to the point of our topic, or unsuccessful. So the base of the pyramid, what is the relevance of the base of a house or the foundation?
It keeps everything else up.
Everything else up. So if the foundation isn't right, the house will crumble, right? So the base of his pyramid, as it relates to teams, is called trust. And trust is the ability for teams to be able to know that what gets said in the environment of the team is for the betterment of the team. So if you're going to give critique on a process or critique on someone's performance or whatever, it's not because you're trying to hinder that person. It's because you have one common goal that you're committed to, and trust means that we can be honest. And what he speaks of, Mr. Lencioni speaks about the fact that if you don't have trust, you really can't go anywhere. If we can't talk about the fact that this brand new process that we thought was awesome is actually not working, it sucks. If we can't talk about that comfortably, that's a problem. We can't move forward. So once you establish a base of trust within a team where everyone's on that common plane of, okay, this is a safe space. What we talk about is all about getting to the top of the pyramid, which we're going to get to. The top of the pyramid, of course, is results. That's what we're trying to get to. So we need trust amongst the team. Trust allows us to have the next layer of his pyramid is conflict. And conflict is not physical fist fighting. Conflict is the ability for you to share an idea and for me to say, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Without you taking offense. Without you looking at me going, asshole, right? Instead, you're looking at me like, well, why? Why do you think it's not a good idea? Why won't it work? And we can debate it out.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. We can conflict it. Yeah, we can talk it out. But I think this will work. No, I don't think it will. Well, what are your reasons? Well, here are my reasons. What do you think? Right? Back and forth. And then everyone in the team getting heard and having that voice allows us to get to the third pillar of the 5, which is commitment. We have trust, which has allowed us to have conflict and debate out our ideas. Okay, now let's make a commitment on what we're going to do. What are we going to do then? We've heard everybody. We've analyzed all the things that we've got to get over to be successful. So now let's all commit to what our roles are and how we're going to make this work. So it's commitment. Okay, my role in this is X. I commit to doing that, right? So without commitment, without people saying, I'll do this, well, as we get ready for our Super Bowl coming up, if defense isn't committed to doing what they need to do, well, offense is going to be struggling, right? Because it's going to be a one-sided battle. Yeah. So everyone's got to play their role. So commitment, and then the next pillar, the second to last pillar, is accountability. Be accountable. Self-accountable and team accountable. Let the team come together and go, Joe, you committed that you were going to make at least 100 calls to help market our product. Yet you only made 50. Be accountable and you own it. You're right. I did. And here are my reasons why, but they're excuses. And you know what? I'll make up for it. I'll do 150 next week because you're committed to the team. You're not making excuses. You're owning it. You're going to play your role. So accountability, and then that last one on the top of the pyramid is results, right? And your results are a direct reflection of what happens on the layers lower down in the pyramid. So now, Mr. Lencioni, I hope I did your speech justice. I can't do it as good as you. He's a great speaker. You got to watch his videos. He's funny. He tells stories that you kind of really engage and relate to and go, that's funny. Oh, God, that happens in our company all the time. No, he's talking about our company. But it allows for self-reflection. The qualities that we talked about regarding successful people and unsuccessful people become the individual contributions to the team being successful or unsuccessful. And for me, that pyramid of 5 pillars, bringing successful and unsuccessful people with their traits into that process of looking at a team and establishing trust, enabling conflict, allowing people to make commitment and agreeing on it, holding accountability and getting results. That's how the full circle comes around and creates the sort of results from teams that you hope to create.
And I think it's important, like, even just to back up, I mean, the reality is, it's like, depending on every organization, there's different sizes, right? And so could you imagine, I mean, having a team of 7,000 people.
Oh, there are teams within teams.
Yeah. And so it's like everyone, 100%. There's so many different results and so many different compromises and or communication skills 100%. That have to happen along the way. Yeah, it's been interesting for me. I want to share something with you. I went with one organization that, I mean, I felt like I got to jump in a time machine. And because when I started with that one organization, it was, it wasn't large, but then I got to watch how it grew. And I saw several of these things kind of fall off at certain points,
Okay.
right, along the way. So it's almost like parts of the foundation crumbled, and then, of course, what happens, like things just kind of fall apart, right? And I've seen it actually for two very similar companies in the same organization or the same industry, if you will. And there's a good book about Great by Choice is the book. And they talk about that as well, different businesses that are successful and why they're successful. And what's cool is they reflect on where the business was at when they did the survey and where they're at that point in time of writing the book. And all of these things, it really relates to the people, and the people who are capable of working on all those traits that they have individually. They work on those.
Yep.
And then they come with the other people that are also working on their individual things. They will be successful wherever they go. And as an example, two of those companies that were great when I worked for both of them, a lot of the people from each of those that were willing to go through that self-analysis, realize what their traits were, what qualities they had, as they've left and navigated over to the company that I work for now.
Yep.
We're being successful as a result because everyone does this. We trust each other.
That's cool.
We're committed to the goal, and we not everybody agrees with some of the items that come up along the way, and so we work with each other to try different ideas and try new things, and we're reinventing ourselves. And I'm looking around going, oh no, like these poor other organizations, like they're just so caught up in some of those, well, we were the best or we are the largest, and so they're just very overly confident in their ability not to lose some of their foundation.
Absolutely.
It's very, very interesting. I think this applies at so many levels. It starts with you personally.
100%.
And then it goes into working with other people. And then, what's great is if you're part of a winning team, like ultimately, if you're part of a team that when you feel good at work and then you come home, your quality of life,
100%.
And when work doesn't feel like work, the quality, it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. The implementation of those things is always the interesting part. You take something like what you were talking about, how you apply it. With the Lencioni thing, what we did was in that role, when I got to hear him speak, at that time, the role I was in a vice president role. I oversaw a region, and I took it away and I went, how do I implement this? This is awesome. And what we did really quickly was we gathered the whole region. We watched the video, we talked about it, we agreed that we were going to be this team that trusted each other. And it's one thing to say, yep, we're going to trust each other. And it's another thing to go, how do you implement it?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did, which I'll share in case it's helpful to anyone, it worked for us. Doesn't mean it worked for someone else, but it worked for us really well. In fact, 20 years later, colleagues I've worked with, we still do it sometimes for fun. Nice. And that is, we call a Lencioni moment. So in other words, let's say you'd committed to X and I'd committed to Y and you didn't do your bit, and I want to call you on it. Maybe you and I are cool with that because we're comfortable just coming out with it, but there's a lot of people that are not. A lot of people are, how do I tell Joe that he didn't do it? Yeah. So we created a safe space. We said, call a Lencioni moment. So what they would do is say, hey, Joe, can we have a conversation? Can we have a Lencioni conversation? And so as soon as we did that, people would immediately drop their defense and go, okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, now all of a sudden it's not personal. You've made it clear. We're going out of our normal relationship. You're just going to tell me something that's a truth.
That's great.
And so, Lencioni, you didn't da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And we had a lot of fun with that. I had some people saying, can I call a Lencioni on your Lencioni? It's like, yeah, go for it. And so, see, you were very impactful, Mr. Lencioni. But anyway, that's implementation is the interesting thing. Yeah. 20 years down the path, some guys I've worked with, sometimes we get on the phone, hey, man, I need a Lencioni with you. Oh, okay, cool. Is he still around? Yeah, he is.
That's awesome. Well, Claude, this has been very insightful. I think across a lot of different aspects of what I think people who are watching this video can first and foremost, right, start with a little bit of the self-analysis and then also look at where they want to imply this to. Because I think this doesn't just apply to business in general. Like, I mean, to have trust in a relationship or conflict, I mean, that that can go across just friendships. That can go across
100%.
Yeah. So all of these things are not necessarily just from a professional setting, but certainly a personal setting.
Life.
And
Yep.
yeah, life lessons. I definitely think, I'm going to do a little bit more day-to-day reflection as you kind of shared that you're doing. I do a lot of that, like I said, weekly. But I appreciate you coming here today and doing this and communicating and articulating everything so well. I mean, literally, I had to have notes because I'm like, okay, where are we going here? And thank you for sharing this with me. Last month, I started implementing some of this with my team. I did like a strategy meeting and took some of these practices. So what you've already shared, I've already tried to implement it across some of my professional settings as well. So
awesome.
I know I'm going to see you in the gym. But
Sure.
I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on again. Is there anything to end it? Where can people find you if they do want to reach out? If they want to have you come do a keynote or anything like that, is there an email you can
that's
share?
great. Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, you're welcome to reach out to Joe or reach out to, his podcast, etc. Or you're welcome to reach out to me at Claude Alhanati at Gmail.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you very much. Perfect. Yeah, I enjoy doing that. I find it as a privilege. It's not an entertainment to me. If someone actually wants to hear what you got to say, it's a privilege. So
somebody in Paris, France, that wants him to come out.
Yes,
him and his wife would gladly.
My wife will gladly help with setting up the room.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. All right, Claude. We are.
Thank you
done.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy.